I feel some deja vu. Do you guys feel some deja vu? If anyone out there feels a little deja vu, please let me know. Because I'm pretty certain we were in this same position with Aoi, haha, dirty jokes, about a year ago when Aoi dueled Spectre, and almost insanely similar to this week, it's Aoi facing the villain's main henchman, and after being built up for a lot of episodes with Akira watching, and you kind of don't know which way it should go, but you're kind of getting that bad feeling it might go a really dumb way. Ah, well, at least there's no hentai tentacles this time. So yeah, this week Aoi dueled Bowman, and I remember reading a few comments in last week's video of people saying they're not excited for this. So I think that sort of shows where this is going. But if I'm gonna be straight up honest, I don't feel as underwhelmed or annoyed as what's going on as when Aoi dueled Spectre. Like I said, the tree roots thing sort of acting as hentai tentacles is glad that's not there. But also, and this is very important, is Bowman is a much more interesting character than Spectre. And part of this is because we got to see Bowman's progression. We got to see Bowman basically start off at the beginning as this kind of wild, sort of running around crazy program, and then we just sort of got to see him become more intellectual and more built up and more stronger as the season progressed, whereas Spectre just kind of came out of nowhere, didn't really do anything besides look like he was Revolver's butler, and then all of a sudden gets to have all these big things like being a Lost Incident victim, having a really creepy looking boss monster, these things that are usually and should be a big deal for a Yu-Gi-Oh series just all sort of get wasted on a henchman character who then barely does anything. With Bowman, I feel like we've seen a lot happen with him and we've been on a journey with this guy. But at the same time, he hasn't actually won a duel yet. So you kind of wonder where this whole thing is going to go, because with Aoi, she has this new deck, and a lot of the cards in it seem interesting, and you think, well, they kind of want to market that. Also, a lot of people didn't like how Aoi lost against Spectre. They thought it was a bit distasteful, and they thought it was a waste of a likable character. So would they be dumb enough to make that mistake a second time? The answer is yes. But will they? Because at the same time, you could also make the argument Bowman actually needs to win here, because we need to show how much more powerful Bowman has gotten, and a character who has been this important to what's going on kind of needs an actual win on his duel record. Also, his new boss monster, the Link 3 guy, I actually think it looks really cool. Not just cool from its design, but I like sort of when you look at the progression of the high drive deck. It starts off a lot like Bowman, being very animalistic, very sort of violent looking, just kind of doing its own crazy thing. Then it becomes more organized. It becomes this knight as it becomes more, I guess kind of manly would be the right word, or sort of humanoid. And now that Bowman has transcended beyond being human and is sort of this quote-unquote perfect being who's about to sort of bring whatever, it looks like sort of more this computer techno type creature. I like that. I think it's a really clever thing, and I like kind of the way it's shown off in the duel. I like this idea that, because normally what they would do is he would go for the 5,000 burn damage, Aoi would negate it, then he'd do his thing. I like the fact that they did a bit of a expectation subversion by making that he's like, no, you've probably seen me in action, or playmakers told you about me, so he kind of goes beyond that and busts out something new. It's a nice little trick, and I quite like it. I also like their dialogue exchange at the beginning. I like the way Aoi sort of brings it to this more personal level. It's not just the big revenge, it's not just the big, we're gonna do what I want, that sort of thing. It's not a general discussion about the human condition or anything. She brings it to this very personal level of, you hurt someone, or your boss did. You did something bad. Someone who had already suffered a lot in life, and you made it a lot worse, and you have to be dealt with for that. I like that she brings it to that more personal level, because if it was Yusaku, I guarantee you he'd just be like, justice and revenge, big stuff, I'm cool. No, it's this much more personal, it's much smaller, and I like everyone's reaction to it. I like that we take that second for our 3 remaining leads to sort of have a moment where they're like, oh yeah, this is a thing. Like, this idea that this goes beyond just their own perspectives, that other people outside of them were hurt by this and affected by this, and it's the first time that's really occurred to them. Obviously, you've got Soulburner, his dead parents, blah, 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 blah. I mean, as sort of through the lens of something we care about. Yeah, that's an interesting bit, and I would love to see that get explored further in the future, and considering most of the show's good writing seems to go to Aoi and sort of more of the personal elements, as maybe some would argue it should, I hope that is where it goes. And hopefully this whole thing will go in a more interesting direction, rather she wins or loses next week, which I hope to God for. Please don't repeat the only female character getting her head smashed into the pavement and no final line, please. Yeah, so kind of an interesting segue. Quick update on my own personal Yu-Gi-Oh series. Maybe part of the reason I went a little bit lighter on what was going on than maybe I usually would is because now that I'm looking into this myself and trying to figure out how you pace a story like this, how you develop plots for a story like this, I'm kind of feeling a little bit what the writers for this show must feel like. Not to say that I'm going back on any of my previous gripes or rants. No, it doesn't change the fact that the show has made a lot of big mistakes. But I kind of feel that pain a little bit more, because it has been kind of hard figuring out what you do with something like this. And yeah, especially because right now my protagonist is kind of looking like Yu-Gi-Oh's version of Aichi. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing or what that says about me, but before we get to that, someone brought up, and I swear I'll directly reference your name if you'd like in the video tomorrow, or at least hopefully tomorrow. Someone suggested I should do a Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 rewrite before I jump into my own series. And I read that, and the more I thought about it, the more interested I got in it, and next thing I know, I had basically a whole idea of where I would take that. So yeah, that's where we're going to start first. We're going to do that little mini-series, however long it takes, to basically rewrite Arc 5, but also a big part of it will be to introduce you all to my writing style, my sort of sensibilities, what I sort of take into account when working on a story or when writing characters, and also I think it'll probably help me get more into the mindset of writing a Yu-Gi-Oh story. So yeah, we're going to start that hopefully tomorrow, and we'll get a bit more into the details on that. As for the TCG question of the week, Structure Deck Revolver was announced. And a lot of the internet is kind of losing its mind because a lot of people are afraid that they'll reprint Borreload Dragon, Boral Sword Dragon, Boral Guard Dragon, these cards that are actually pretty expensive, or at least getting expensive in the case of Boral Guard. And I'm kind of like on the fence, and what do you guys think? Because personally, I doubt they would reprint Boral Sword in this. I doubt they would reprint the most expensive card in Yu-Gi-Oh! In a structure deck based on what will most likely be anime-based nonsense. I think more realistically, I think the goal to this product will be to make the rockets more viable in the same way that's what the Salamangreat structure deck did. I think it'll maybe be to make that archetype more usable, flesh out some of its problems, make that more functional, probably get a Rocket Link monster, and it'll probably be stuff you see Revolver use either in his next duel, probably against Lightning, or maybe even if in the next season he kind of is the one who starts the plot off, stuff he'll use at the beginning. That would be what I would like to see, but ultimately time will tell. Tell me what you think about that below, what you think about the Arc 5 rewrite idea, if you're okay with sort of Yu-Gi-Oh version of Aichi, or I guess my own version of Aichi. he's not actually that much like Aichi the more I think about it and the more I sort of pasted the story out. It's just kind of that's how I fear he would come across at first. But tell me about that below. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me hopefully tomorrow for what will hopefully not be a complete disaster.